everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Life Work Balance podcast. I am Lkstarkey, and here with me is our co-host, Paul Conley. So we're lucky today to have a returning guest, and I have my pen and paper ready because this is a subject that I need all the help on because it is not a strong suit of mine. So Paul, I'll let you go ahead and talk about our topic and introduce our guest.
Yeah, I've been eagerly awaiting this podcast all week. I've just been impatient about it, if you will. It's funny because our topic is patience. When this topic came up, Leah and I talked about it a little bit, and there's topics that we've talked about in the past that I may not have the most knowledge on. This topic is one that I have little to no practical knowledge on in my everyday life. So we had to bring in somebody that could help us. Thus, bringing in Pamela, who was with us, I don't know, probably episode 5. Happy to have her. She's a business coach and her practice is the business of you. Pamela, welcome. It's good to have you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Leah. It's great to see you. Great to be here, guys.
And before we get really going here, I'd like to shout out Leah. In every podcast, sometimes people are playing hurt, and Leah's playing a little bit injured today. And she showed up 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, no matter what. So kudos to Leah for being here and giving it her best for the audience.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little nasally today, guys. Sorry about that. Fingers crossed. We're hoping it's not COVID. We'll find out tomorrow. If it is, we'll do our due diligence. I'm steering clear of everybody and doing my part and quarantining with my dog in my room in the meantime.
Nothing beats Zoom for this one.
Right.
All right. So I'm going to get us started here. And I think this is the only way we could start it, really, is if you're somebody like me and you're a tad impatient at all times, where would you start with something like that? And what advice would you start by giving, Pamela?
So my first question is, do you really believe that you're impatient at all times?
No, probably not. But about 95% of the time, I would say that it's fair to say. I'm very patient when I'm asleep.
Aren't we all?
Well played.
Fair enough. Mindfulness. You can't be patient without being mindful. And mindfulness is definitely a key component when working towards perfecting the act of being patient or just implementing the act of being patient. What is patience, right? If you look up the definition of patience, I think it's something like being able to meet the trials and tribulations without pain, or to be in pain without complaint, and to be calm and to be experiencing something without complaining about it. That is what patience is. I think that we as a culture have been given a terrible disservice through the magic, and you guys can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes around the word magic, of television and movies. If you've ever watched a DIY show, if you ever watched a home being renovated on television, if you've ever watched any kind of movie or show that has a project that needs to be completed, they're completing it within a half an hour to an hour. And I think that we are conditioned to believe that projects or things take very little time, thanks to, again, the air quotes of the magic of television and movies. We are literally shown time and time and time again, based on what it is that we're consuming, that things get done very quickly. And that just is not the case. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes,
right?
I would agree with that.
Things just don't happen overnight. There is no such thing as an overnight success. Rome was not built in a day. So I think the first thing that we have to acknowledge is, first of all, the definition of patience, which again is meeting trials and tribulations and pain calmly and without complaint. And the other thing that we need to acknowledge is the fact that we as human beings are what we consume. So if we are consuming things such as television or movies that show us scenarios where a large project that would normally take 6 months to a year or more gets done within an hour or a couple of episodes, we are consuming that, and that's what ends up being a belief. And I'm not sure if we spoke about this before, but a belief, hear me when I say this, a belief is nothing more than something that has been repeatedly said or repeatedly done over and over and over again, that we then cement into ourselves or in our thoughts, that we then believe what we are being told. So I'm going to stop right there and just check in. Any questions about that or any thoughts about that?
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right? So if we are consuming the idea that something doesn't take a long time and we're about to start the same type of project or work towards a goal, and we're thinking it's going to take a very little amount of time, and it doesn't, it actually takes 3 months or more, etc., we become impatient. Right. So I think the first thing that we have to do is recognize that we've been taught that things happen very quickly, and that's not the case at all. And I think that will help people understand that it's going to take time to get from where they are to where they want to be.
Yeah, I'd love your input on this too. It's always interesting when you're looking back on something that, oh, wow, it really wasn't that long of a period of time. You think, like, for example, I made the decision to start my coaching practice here, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. I didn't even consider this in January of 2021, really. And to me, there's days where I'm like, well, I should have it all figured out. And that's just not the case. I know that. Objectively, I would tell that to someone else, but sometimes I have a hard time telling myself that. But in 20 years, I'll probably look back and go, well, it only had been 6 months. So how does something like that work?
Well, I think the other thing that we as humans and our culture teaches us is to not be our own best friend and to be a bully to ourselves. We have this internal dialogue. Everybody talks to themselves. Everybody. There's this constant chatter that is consistently going in the back of our mind, whether we are engaged in an activity or not. And when we become more mindful, more self-aware, we can then become aware of what that dialogue is, what that internal dialogue is. And if you are someone like the rest of us who thinks that we could be doing it better, so we bully ourselves, we know we're capable of doing more, we know what we're capable of, and sometimes we don't. But when we know what we're capable of, we tend to berate ourselves. Why didn't you do it this way? Why are you finishing it here? Why can't you have it sooner? We're constantly setting these, people say deadlines. I change my language around. I prefer the word live line. But when we are expecting something, we are attached to the outcome of that. And when we don't reach that outcome in the timely fashion that we, again, place that time on for ourselves, that live line, this needs to be done by such and such a time, we then begin to bully ourselves and berate ourselves, and we aren't nice to ourselves. So that internal dialogue continues, and we consistently repeat that to ourselves, whether we're aware of it or not. And when we're not aware of it, it gets sunk in because, again, a belief is something that we repeatedly tell ourselves. So this is the operating system that we've been operating under in terms of moving forward and having patience or not having patience. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
So is it fair to say that if we change our internal speak or our terminology to ourselves, or be more cognizant of the things we're saying to ourselves in our head, that it can possibly help us just to become more patient over time, just kind of a learned behavior?
Yes, everything is a learned behavior. We are one big walking habit. All of us. We eat the same way. We wash our hair the same way. We take the tissue to, blow our nose the same way. We fold. Everything is a habit. And those habits become who we are. First, we make our habits, and then our habits make us. So impatience is no different than a habit. It is something that we formulate, we practice really well, we get great at it. We see the road rage. We might be standing in line of a grocery line, and we're just harumphing, and we want things to push through. That is a habit that we have absolutely talked ourselves into. And I'm not sure if you've heard me say this before, Leah, but what we speak into existence.
Yeah.
What we repeatedly say, we are manifesting. If you're constantly telling yourself how impatient you are fortifying that as a belief, and you are cementing that belief in yourself, and therefore your behavior will exemplify your statement that you are impatient with anything that you're doing. And so the one way that we can combat this or embrace it really is to accept where we're at. The first thing that we can do, and this isn't AA or anything like that, but this is life, right? If you're in a specific area and you want to move from that area to go to a different category or level up or whatever, you must first accept where you're at. So I accept the fact that I've just been belittling myself and berating myself. I accept the fact that I'm super impatient regarding this matter. I'm whatever it is, choosing to accept it. I had a client who was balding and had a comb over, and he was in his early 30s, and he was very impatient with this experience. He was unable to swim with his daughter, who was a toddler at the time, because he didn't want to go into the water because of the comb over, or
oh my gosh,
whatever it was that he was doing for his hair. It wasn't a comb over. He actually had the plugs or whatever it's called. I don't know the actual treatment. And After working with me, he chose to actively work to become patient and accept the fact that he was a balding man. He was going to be bald or is bald. And within 3 months' time, he grew to accept it, became patient with himself, and no longer belittled himself, and was able to accept the fact that he was balding to the point where he no longer went for treatments, completely shaved his head, and he's never felt more liberated.
Oh.
I share that story to exemplify and really drive home the fact that you must accept where you're at first in order to move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue, because one of the questions and one of the things I kind of want to think through the psychology of this one, I think, where I will be, and I think a lot of people do this, you're stuck in traffic, it's not moving anywhere, or you're at the grocery store and there's one line and you have no choice. You have no control in this matter. And yet people get upset. They get themselves all upset. They look at the clock like it's going to change something. And every single one of us knows nothing you do in this situation is going to actually make things quicker. However, we get ourselves all excited about it and all upset and mad and everything. Why do we do that?
Well, it's not the real you, the real us, the real person who's listening to this podcast right now, this episode. The real you, your natural state is peace. When we're born knowing that our needs are going to be met. And again, our natural state is peace. Anything that is not peaceful, anything that is anxiousness, anxiety, just not feeling well is not from your higher power, your higher self. And so the culprit is actually our ego. One's ego edges goodness out, and one's ego wants us in a state of chaos. Our ego wants us in a state of striving, always being busy, always achieving, always doing. And our natural state is being and peaceful, but our ego wants us to be separate from our natural state. Our ego wants us to be separate from our higher power or your higher power. And so it elicits these mini battles that's always going on in our mind. And boy, if there's ever a time where patience is needed, it's now. In fact, there's a very popular scripture that is read during most wedding ceremonies, where love is patient and love is kind. It's never boastful. So anything that is coming from our ego doesn't lend itself for patience. And the ego wants us scattered. It wants us separate. It wants us constantly doing so that we are separate again from our source or from our higher power. Nowadays, businesses, if you're in a business, if you're in a store, if you're in a restaurant, what's happened to our world? Businesses are not staffed properly. People are choosing to not go back to work because of the unemployment that was given, or people are choosing to not go to work because they don't want to get sick, or for whatever reason that they are choosing to not go back to work. So there's a lot of businesses that are shorthanded, and it requires waiting. If you want something, you're going to have to wait. So ego creates these scenarios and these situations so that we remain stuck. We remain in pain. We remain angry. We remain frustrated and impatient because that keeps you from actually living your full potential. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it does.
So what is it that we can do about it? How do we counter ego's attacks? How do we counter being impatient? I've got some ideas, but I'd love to just offer that up as a conversation with you guys.
So patience is something I've been working on since I was extremely young. It's something that I didn't realize I was bad at or not great at until I was a bit older, and I realized I didn't need to be such a jerk about things. But I've done a lot of work in ways that I can create more patience within myself and just realize that I am where I'm supposed to be. And that there's no coincidence that's a coincidence. It's for a reason. And it's taken a lot of work and a lot of patience for me to realize these things. And a lot of that has come through meditation, or also listening to other people's stories of how they've come from where they've come from. Because so many people want to tell their story when they're already there. You know, they've already made it. Life's so great. Life's wonderful. They're on Instagram posting all the beautiful pictures of all the things. Well, when you're scrolling through and you see this, like, well, shit, why isn't my life like that? Why am I 39 and all over the place? But it's taken a lot of work for me to go back and listen to the people who are now successful that went through the same things I'm going through right now. I'm just running the course on the journey, and that the journey is part of the excitement of it all, and that's part of the process. Doesn't mean I'm good at reminding myself of that every day, but I try to remind myself, and in that I attempt to do a lot of different joyful meditations. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube for free that I found I can use, and I mean, it beginning of the day, end of the day, middle of the day, meditate whenever I can or need to has kind of been something I use. Sometimes it works, sometimes it takes a little more practice.
Yeah, great job on the meditation piece.
I need to meditate. I know it's good for me. I struggle with it. We'll circle back on that another time. But I think just in the times where I have been patient, things have worked out better than when I've been impatient. Mm-hmm. And that's just really as simply as I can make it. A great example, and Pamela, you know this one well, Leah, you know this one well too. When we started searching for a house, we had taken a pause because of COVID. We didn't know what was going to happen. We went and looked at the house on January 1st of this year. I had written down in my goals that I wanted to buy a house in 2021. We went, looked at a house. It was a great house, put an offer in on it. This is the first time we'd done this. I called my dad. We got a house. Bought a house today. That was kind of cool. Quickly found out that we were one of like 49,000 offers, and we didn't get the house. So I was like, all right, well, now I was like really down about it. And then we put in offers on multiple houses, and anybody doing that right now, I'm with you on that. It's tough. We were, I think we were 0 for 11. And Pamela and I started working together in February, and that was a constant thing that would come up every week. It was like, put another offer on a house. Didn't get it. And she kept saying to me, whenever you're supposed to get the house, the right house will find you when you're ready. And we were getting ready to we had a decision to make by the end of April. We were going to re-sign our lease, or we were going to buy a house. That was I'm stealing this live line. That's awesome, by the way.
It is great.
Was going to literally be April 30th. We were going to make the decision by then. April 20th or so, we thought we found the house, ended up getting outbid by somebody else, was literally about to sign the paperwork to re-sign our lease. Realtor calls us and says, hey, the other person's offer fell through. You guys are the top bidder. It's yours. And it was like, wait, what happened? And then the way they wanted to structure the deal allowed us to almost move out of our apartment without breaking our lease, without paying anything extra, and walk right into the new house at the exact right time. And honestly, I think I'd been working on it in the prior, but at that point I was just like, okay, well, I mean, what control do I have on this thing? Right. You know, I can put the work in, I can put the effort in, but sometimes you just have to say it'll be when it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. It's trusting the process. Yeah. Leah, you mentioned that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. That's something that I tell my clients a lot. If you were meant to be any place else, you would be.
Right, yeah.
And when we react to a scenario or situation like the house, we're not trusting. We're part of nature. We're no different we're different obviously from the animal kingdom, but you don't see a hyena, an elephant, or whatever animal or bird you choose in this example. You don't see them getting impatient with nature. Right? They don't distrust. They're very instinctual. And over the years, we have lost our instincts. We have grown away from nature, went more towards intellect, more towards science. And we've done ourselves a terrible disservice, as I mentioned earlier, with the magic of television, again, teaching us one way. Yeah. You know, there was a time when I was a kid, I had to wait for a whole year before I could watch Rudolph and Frosty the Snowman. All the old television shows, right? The old claymations or whatever. Nowadays, you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want. It's instant gratification. Mm-hmm. This is what we have been conditioned to expect. And so when you're in your 30s, as you're going through life, if you're building a business, whatever it is that you're doing, it's a process of unlearning all that you've been conditioned and taught over the years, specifically related to this topic, patience or impatience, and reteaching yourself how to be just that, patient, which requires being more mindful, because when you're in the present moment and when you're more mindful, you remember things very easily, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The perfect house is going to find me at the perfect time. The perfect job is going to find, I'm going to have the perfect job at the perfect time for the perfect pay. These are things that, going back to the internal dialogue that we have with ourselves all of the time. If you are not paying attention to what it is that your mind is telling you or that your ego is telling you, you will become a slave to your mind. And when you become aware of what it is that you are saying to yourself or that your ego is saying to you, you can then choose to have your spirit override your ego and begin to tell yourself a different dialogue, like I just said, with the perfect time of the perfect, you're going to have the perfect house at the perfect time, etc. So it's a process of, when you're listening to this, if you want to write this down, I invite you to do that. It's a process of accepting exactly where you are. It is what it is. I haven't achieved my PhD. I haven't written my book yet. I'm procrastinating on this, whatever the story is, accept it. It is what it is. I choose to accept exactly where I'm at, because if I were supposed to be anywhere, like you said, Leah, earlier, you would be, and you would be in a different place. The second thing is to stop resisting, because what you resist persists. And if you are in the process of resisting the process of building out a business, building a sales career, whatever it is that you're working towards, if you're resisting the process, you're actually keeping the very thing that you're wanting and desiring away from you. You're keeping it at arm's length, because the resistance will continue to duplicate itself. And gratitude, let me leave you guys with this. If you want to end impatience, learn to find the silver lining, or learn to be grateful. Find your gratitude and maintain your gratitude in everything and for everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because gratitude is, there is no such thing as a magic pill, but the closest thing to it is gratitude. So I had a client that I was speaking to earlier before this interview, and she's building a coaching practice. And she's impatient with the lack of leads or the lack of things and activity that's happening. And she's like, why? And my response to her is, what's going on right now? What's going on in your life right now that you can be grateful for? Well, the fact she still has a full-time job, that she has money coming in, the fact that this time she has time to rest. If there's no activity coming in, she can actually rest and gear up and prepare for what's to come. Because that's the other thing that I've learned. If things die down, if things are quiet for you, it is the universe saying to you, this is a natural break. You are part of the natural law. This is a natural time for you to rest. This is a natural time for you to investigate or read about your practice, about your craft, about whatever it is that you're aiming towards. And so when there is a lull, when you are being impatient, specifically around career, I guess this is a great example, that is the invitation. That is the neon sign when you're impatient, to find the gratitude, to find the silver lining in that experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think on the career front, I talk to people about that one all the time, because people are always wanting to get promoted or the next job or whatever. And I always caution people to, number one, are you enjoying what you're doing now? Okay, good. I'm assuming you want the raise for whatever reason, more money, the title, whatever the case may be. But to be able to, you might get that next position. But if you're not good at that position, you're either going to lose your job completely, or if you're just average at it, you're going to be stuck there. So that's where your growth ends. But if you can really be ready for that next position and go in and do really well at that one, then you can have continued growth. And I think some people, myself included, I think we've all been there, where we're so ready, there's the air quotes on a podcast again. We're so ready for that next position in our minds. We think we can do it better than this person, whatever, that when we get there, we don't know what we don't know. And then if it doesn't go the way we think it's going to go, your progress ends. Whereas if you can be 100% ready for it and then dominate it, then your progression continues long term.
100%. When you look back on your life and all of the things that you wanted now or yesterday, can you see, and I'm asking the audience this too, have you been able to connect the dots as to understanding why things happened the way that they did? You can see the steps that brought you, why you had to do that detour, why you ended up whatever. You understand that it's all part of the training. Everything that you have asked for the patience, the steps, the crisscrossing of patterns, the whatever it is that got you there is all for a reason. And to trust that process, to trust the reasons that you needed to learn a skill set, or you needed to experience that heartbreak, or you needed to experience XYZ in order for you to be able to do the very thing or experience the very thing that you've been asking for. And I think that's a good thing too, to be able to trust the process.
Yeah, I actually think about that a lot when it comes to at the right time that I met Jenna, because I remember being at a lot of different weddings and thinking, I don't know, I don't think marriage is going to be for me. I wasn't able to connect with anybody that I could really see myself spending the rest of my life with. And I really had kind of said, I just don't think that. I wasn't down on myself. I just didn't think it was going to be the right fit for me. And now I look back and I go, okay, it was because I probably wasn't. If I had met her at 22, I probably would have blown it. I wasn't probably ready to be a boyfriend, fiance, husband, father, etc. Meeting somebody when you're older, I look back and I'm like, 22, I wasn't ready to take care of myself, let alone somebody else or be a part of that. So I 100% think that when you have hindsight, it's amazing. You can look back and go, oh, thank God that I didn't. Yeah. That didn't work out because I wasn't ready for that job, relationship thing to happen. I think about it sometimes coaching now. If 100 people tomorrow said, hey, I want to work with you, I don't have the capacity to do that, nor do I want to do that.
Right.
So maybe it's going the exact way it should go.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, I think of that Garth Brooks song, Unanswered Prayers. I think of, because, I'm not in a relationship, but I think of the relationships I hoped and prayed and let it work out and we'll get married and have kids. Woo! In hindsight, seeing them now, thank goodness I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, and thank goodness those didn't work out. But it taught me a lot about what I do and don't want for the future. And if I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't know what I wanted.
We have a special guest today. We have two, actually. We have Pamela, and we have the star of the show, actually, Sweet D. So if you didn't know, Sweet D's upset. Okay, because we've been pumping Cleveland Cookie Guy, but she's been patiently waiting, 32 minutes into this podcast for a mention of Sweet D's teas, and we haven't done it.
Poor girl.
You know what? I think Sweet D gets a lot of credit. She made it 32 minutes. She listened well, but at a certain point, you can't be patient forever, and she wanted to shout herself out. Bye, Sweet D's Teas.
SweetD'sTeas.com. Sorry, guys.
That was fun. So, we're talking through a lot of this stuff, and there's a lot of big picture things here, I think. A lot of great stuff. I've learned a lot today. But when I think about anything, like I look at things from a workout perspective. If I said I was going to run a marathon tomorrow, I wouldn't try to go out and run 26 miles. So I look at patience as I'm just starting out. I don't even have the running shoes. I haven't been on a jog in a while. What is one thing or two things maybe that I could start developing a habit around today that'll get me a little bit more patient in a month, in 2 months, in a year from now?
The first thing I offer up is telling yourself how supremely patient you are. Whenever you get a chance, make it part of your dialogue, your affirmations, and visualizing exactly what patient means to you, and see yourself being patient. The first thing, just create that dialogue for yourself. Set reminders for yourself. Put that statement everywhere you are so that when you have an idle moment, when you're not, because we're creating all of the time. We're either creating something negative or we're creating something positive with our thoughts and with our words that we're thinking and speaking. So that's the first thing, is just create a dialogue. You begin to tell yourself, override the ego's dialogue, override the older programming, and let your spirit rise up, and you tell yourself exactly how supremely patient you are. The other thing is start doing activities that develop patience, like potentially doing a puzzle, for example. When you are inclined or have the urge to pick up your phone, you put a pause and a break, build that patience up. You don't need to look at your phone right away. You put your phone down and you tell yourself how supremely patient you are instead of picking it up right away. Take public transportation.
Interesting.
Instead of driving your own vehicle. When you are waiting in line and the line is long, or you're waiting for the wait staff to come over, instead of focusing on being impatient and having to wait, use your energy to create something good. Take the time to potentially say a prayer. Take the time to just send good vibes or good thoughts to somebody that you love or who's feeling under the weather. Do something different than feel impatient. Actually take action other than feeling impatient. And this is a good segue to what I wanted to talk about, the North Star. If your goal is to be more patient and you are experiencing impatience, or you're checking your watch, or you're just being a nudge, is that moving you closer to your North Star of being patient, or is that moving you farther away from your North Star? Is complaining and swearing in the car when you're waiting in line or there's traffic or an accident, is that moving you closer to your North Star of getting home on time and safely and being more patient? Or is that moving you away from being kinder or patient with your family? In any given moment, we are either of our right mind or we're not of our right mind in any given moment. As soon as we lose our control over our emotions, we have given our power over to our ego and to whoever else is involved. And so to develop more patience, practice being patient with yourself. If you had a child, if Leah did something that was upset you and you were impatient towards her, you wouldn't, or maybe you would, I don't know your relationship, but you wouldn't berate her, you wouldn't belittle her, you wouldn't say, why aren't you moving faster? These are things that you could not be doing for yourself either. Talk to yourself the way that you're choosing to talk to other people that are important in your life. So how's that sitting?
Yeah, that's good. I actually, as you were sitting here talking, I was thinking a lot about, okay, traffic doesn't really bother me as much as it does some. The grocery store line will get me a little bit, but traffic, what am I going to do?
Listen to a podcast.
Right. Well, so honestly, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, because there are people out there that traffic really gets a movement. All of us, the Life Work Balance Nation, could literally say, I'm really glad I have this opportunity to listen to another podcast or to call someone that I haven't talked to in a long time. This is an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity if we allow it to be one. If we allow it to be negative, today it's raining. Well, yeah, okay, it's going to rain some days. It might be a great opportunity for you to take a break and watch movies on the couch and energize yourself, or do a project in the house that you've been putting off because you don't want to do it. There's a positive to everything if you find it.
Yeah, 100%. That's that silver lining and the gratitude. And sometimes it's an opportunity to just breathe. If you're a shallow breather, if your shoulders are hunched over, if you're sitting in that car, it's a perfect opportunity to just inhale and exhale and sit with yourself. It's a perfect opportunity to connect with people, loved ones, etc. It's good examples.
And I really like you touched on the gratitude. I think that's such an underused skill that people can start putting into their lives for many different reasons. And I've heard other people talk about how it's really difficult to be in a bad mood when you're grateful for something. So that's something I've tried to bring into my life because of the fact that my biggest pet peeve is wasting time. It's always been like that. I don't know why that's been ingrained in my head. So I try to take a minute, be grateful, like you said, maybe grateful for the time that I have to listen to a podcast, call somebody, make the list that I put off doing till later, and then just genuinely write down the things that I'm grateful for, because it is kind of hard to be pissed off at the fact that I'm wasting time, quote unquote, wasting time, if there are things that I'm grateful for. So I think just being grateful and even writing down what you're grateful for, repeating to yourself what you're grateful for, I think it's a good way to kind of bring you back down to reality, because sometimes when we get impatient, we get crazy. We really do. I don't even know who I become. And I'm like, wait, why was I so upset?
That's not being of our right mind. And when we're not of our right mind, we can't make very good decisions for ourselves. So again, it's about being a master of your mind versus a slave to it. And one avenue to do that is through the gratitude that we're talking about now.
And something else I was thinking about, and correct me if there's a better way to do this, but I think if you're somebody that gets real mad in traffic, for example, I know I've used that example a few times. If you find yourself getting really mad, you've really got your blood boiling over this. Stop and kind of laugh at yourself. Honestly, look at yourself and be like, I can't do anything about this. why would I get mad? Just maybe that's even step one. Just accept it and kind of laugh at yourself. Like, what am I getting so mad about? It's not going to move that car in front of me. That car is not going anywhere quicker. And as we're talking through this, Leah, one of the things that have come to mind throughout for me has been, can you imagine? I know that I'm working on patience. I know that you're working on patience. Can you imagine what, I don't want to sound like old man get off my lawn guy, but like, can you imagine it's 1998 and it's May and Friends season finale is on.
Oh my gosh,
and
yeah.
Ross says, "Will you marry me, Rachel?"
Yeah.
And then the whole thing cuts out until September of that year.
I'm amazed that we were able to do that, like literally.
Well, we didn't know any other
right,
way.
Right.
Now I'm like, and I've lived through that. I made it.
Yeah.
And there are times where I can't hit the Netflix button fast enough.
Oh, yeah.
When it's like 20 seconds to the next episode.
No.
I'm like, no,
Yeah.
get it now.
Yes.
But I think that we honestly, as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, you know what? If I were to teach a class on patience, I would have them watch all of the Friends episodes until that one.
That's funny.
Pause and say, I'll catch in 4 months. Then just...
They won't know what to do. They won't know
Figure
what to do.
it out.
They won't know what to do.
But
just live through it.
But for real, like today's day and age are really, like you said, at a disservice because they never went through patience. Like they never had to get up and change the TV channel themselves either, by the way. But think about, we've got Amazon. Do you, answer this truthfully, do you buy anything that is not on your Amazon Prime that's not showing up in 1 to 2 days? I don't.
Not happily.
No.
I'm not happy about it.
Not unless they don't have it on Prime. Yeah. Like I'm guilty.
Like, and sometimes I'm even like, wait, it's not coming today? I guess I can wait till tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. We've been conditioned.
Leah, anything else from you? Otherwise, I kind of would like to just have Pamela recap for anybody that maybe didn't catch everything. And
I was going to make one point about the traffic, and this is just to put this story in people's heads because this is how I became more calm sitting in traffic. So there's a big high-rise bridge where I live, and I have to take it back and forth to work. And one day I was coming home from work where the traffic is already heavy. It was rainy. It was rush hour, whatever. And, super frustrated because sitting in traffic and it was going to take 45 minutes to an hour to get home instead of the normal 30 minutes. And of course, I'm listening to podcasts. All of a sudden, everything came to a standstill. So, of course, being a jerk, I'm like, what's wrong with these people? They can't drive, yada, yada, yada. Well, it turns out literally 5-6 cars in front of me, you could see actually a car hanging off the edge of the bridge. If I was rushing or if I was trying to get there quicker, it easily could have been me in that situation. Mm-hmm. So I try to remind myself when I'm sitting in traffic is you're where you're supposed to be. And it kind of brings a little sense of calm to me while I'm sitting in traffic is at least I'm not the guy hanging over the side of the bridge. And yeah, it took 2.5 hours to get home because this poor person didn't make it. We had to let them close the roads down. So if you ever find yourself stressed out in traffic, be glad you're not that guy. And if you were speeding up or cutting people off or driving erratically, it could have been you.
Great
perspective, Leah.
Yep, it's true. Very true. In terms of recapping, I think acceptance is the first key, the first step. Accepting exactly where you're at, that you're stuck in traffic, that you are where you are in your career, that your children aren't behaving the way that they are, whatever. Just it is what it is. And you are part of a natural law. And the second piece of that is I didn't mention this earlier, but just pause and breathe. We hear it all of the time, but hardly any of us actually practice that. But when you breathe, you're actually slowing your nervous system down, automatically, physically helping you feel calmer. Stop resisting, because what you resist does persist. So when you complain about something that is a form of resistance, you are cementing that feeling even further, and that's moving you away from the North Star that you are trying to move towards, etc. Acknowledge ingratitude is the next piece of it. Finding the gratitude and maintaining the gratitude of the entire experience, that everything is happening according to divine plan, if you will. It's all perfect timing. You're not the one that's in that car accident or hanging over the bridge. and use your time wisely, like we talked about. Listen to a podcast, breathe, talk to yourself better, read something according to your industry or an industry that you want to go into, or how to have more patience, and befriend the situation. Like you just mentioned, Leah, with regards to actually befriending it, you're recognizing that that's not you hanging over the bridge, and you're grateful for that. But let's take it a step further and have compassion. I think that's a huge key component to finding patience and maintaining patience as well. If you're standing in line, if you're having a hard time being waited on, or whatever the case may be, we never know what's going on in somebody else's mind. Yeah. And we never know what's going on behind closed doors. And we certainly don't know how people are treating themselves. So if they're beating themselves up, they already are having a hard time in life per se, and your impatience isn't going to add anything other than fuel to that fire, especially yours, making you become less of your right mind. And when we're not of our right mind, we can't make really good decisions. So I think I'll leave it there.
That's good.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yes.
I hope everybody enjoyed it. Now, next week, we have a topic. Not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to patiently await next Friday's topic.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you
Have
so
a good
much.
one.